In my previous video, I described how Nasser and El Amar recklessly drove the region to a war no one wanted. I'll begin this video by stating they kind of had a point. By June 67, Egypt had 7 divisions and 120,000 men in the Sinai Peninsula. The alliance Egypt signed with Jordan, Syria and Iraq meant Israel had to keep significant forces in front of Jordan and Syria. And after drafting every eligible man could position no more than 3 divisions against Egypt's 7 in Sinai. By far the most fortified region the Egyptian army held was the region of Katef and Abu Agiela. For Egypt, this region meant that once the Israeli army will commit to a main effort, they can move reinforcement where needed. In the Suez Crisis of '56, Israel couldn't take the area and had to circle around it. This is why Egypt positioned 2 divisions and 6 extra artillery battalions on this area alone. Our video will concentrate on the battle that took place in the center between Sharon's 30th Division and the 2nd and 3rd Egyptian Divisions. Most of the Sinai Peninsula is mountainous and the rest is sand dunes. This makes any mechanized movement, even tanks, practically impossible outside roads and paths. Strategically, it means that road junctions are vital for controlling the region. Sinai had 3 road systems: east to west, the shoreline road along the Mediterranean Sea; center for Kusema and Abu Agiela; south for Kuntila and Eilat. The gateways to the Suez Canal were in the center for the Gidi and Mitle passages. Israel's plan was to mitigate Egypt's superior numbers by taking hold of the road junction and preventing Egyptian reinforcement moving through. One more way of overcoming Egypt's defense is deception. To divert some of the Egyptian army from the Israeli main effort, a false division was created. By raising clouds of dust and packing the radio waves, they persuaded the Egyptian HQ to move a divisional task force, Shazli, southward. By early June, the Egyptian army had Palestinian Division and 7th Division in the Gaza Strip blocking the shoreline road, the 2nd Division at Katef and Abu Agiela, 3rd Division at the back at Jabal Libni, 4th Division at Bir Gafgafa, 6th Division in the south. Israel had in front of Egypt 84th Division, commanded by Tal and designated to take the Gaza Strip and the shoreline road. 31st Division, commanded by Yaffe in the back, planned to infiltrate deep inside Sinai once the first line of Egypt's defense will give way. And 38th Division, commanded by Sharon, intended to take Katef and Abu Agiela. Katef was a high ground overlooking the road junctions between El Arish and Kusema. It was imperative for both armies to take control of those junctions. If Egypt will manage to reinforce the defense lines in the Gaza Strip, Israel's attack will grind to a halt. And indeed, as Israel anticipated, in the afternoon of the first day, Tal's division had almost 50% attrition of its tanks. The fortified trenches of Katef were long, man-high trenches with anti-tank positions and dozens of artillery barrels. The Egyptian generals were confident this region is impregnable, and once they will identify Israel's main effort, they could move enough forces to frustrate any attack. Sharon had to plan his attack carefully. The 3-kilometer-long trenches and the heavy artillery meant a day charge will be catastrophic. A night attack inside the trenches will risk friendly fire and no air support for his infantry. In the morning of the 5th of June, right after the IAF attacked the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, Tal's division went to sever the Gaza Strip from the rest of Sinai. At the same time, 200th Tank Brigade from the 31st Division crossed the border as well. Egypt's 2nd Division had 2 infantry brigades, tank brigade and 6 artillery battalions. 30th Division had 99 regular infantry brigade, 14th tank brigade and 80 reserve paratrooper brigade. On top of that, Sharon had 2 independent tank battalions. Morning of 5th of June, 52nd Battalion for 14th Tank Brigade went to take the outpost of Basis and the larger Tarfa. With artillery fire and combined tank and infantry effort, Tarfa fell by 12 noon. The heavy Egyptian artillery, on the other hand, caused minor damage, since the percussion detonator the Egyptian used were mostly absorbed by the soft dunes. To block reinforcement from Tel Arish or Jabal Livni, 200th Tank Brigade went to make fire contact with Bir Lakhfan Junction. Egypt HQ reacted by sending 141 tanks and 112 infantry brigades from Jabal Livni northward in order to keep the junction open. The fire exchange carried out until the morning after with 200th Tank Brigade, keeping the junction effectively closed. At 11 o'clock, 226th Tank Battalion started firing at Darja Turk. By 12, the outpost surrendered and 226 started firing from a distance at Katef. 63rd Independent Battalion was sent on a northern unpaved road to overtake 181 outpost, a long post with deep trenches overlooking the junction and supplies necessary cover for the Katef fortification. At 12 o'clock, Nat Kinnear, 63rd Battalion commander, decided not to wait for his infantry, stuck behind him in the dunes, and attack 181 by himself. 6 of his tanks went on anti-tank mines and 2 more were hit by anti-tank shells. Soon it became clear this attack is not going anywhere, and Near ordered a retreat to reorganize. After a tour around 181 in a helicopter, Near battalion charged again, this time with his infantry company, and by 4 o'clock they managed to take the post. Air Force, designated to keep the south flank secure, faced heavy artillery and was ordered to halt his progress. By noon his force was divided to 2, one to keep fire contact with the junction from a distance, and the second to get closer to the road leading from Kusema to Katef after dark. In the afternoon, Sharon had his flank secured. Now his division needed to take the trenches and somehow deal with the artillery battalions firing at them. At 4 p.m., 99th Brigade was transferred by buses as close as possible to Katef. After sundown, a force from 80 paratroopers landed on a dune west of the artillery compound, which on their side started targeting the landing site. After several rounds of transport, 2 forces of company size went on a hidden route and attacked the Egyptian artillery compound. It was an ambitious plan carried out by a young army, and naturally it did not go as planned for the attacking force. The walk in the 100 feet high dunes was extremely difficult. The helicopter made enough noise for the defender to identify the landing zone, and to add hardship, close ammunition explosion caused large number of casualties on the Israeli side. Before the days of GPS, pinpoint night navigation, especially among sand dunes, was practically impossible. To make sure his infantry will find the entrance to the trenches, Sharon ordered 2 barrels of his artillery detachment to target the entrance during the day and keep firing around every minute during the night. At 10:40, all of Sharon artillery barrels fired at Katef simultaneously. 7,000 shells were dropped in 20 minutes. 907 Battalion was assigned the first trench and 906 the second. 76 Battalion was left as a reserve, and if everything goes to plan, will enter the third trench. The Egyptian defenders were caught off guard. The attack was not carried out in front of them as they expected, but inside the trenches, cancelling the defenders' superior numbers and causing confusions in their ranks. By midnight, the Egyptian HQ started bombing their own trenches, but to no avail. The trenches were deep and the artillery had no impact. By 4 o'clock in the morning, the trenches were cleared and the engineers started to clear the mines for the tanks to go through. Now the entire artillery compound was exposed to the Israeli tank offensive. By far more than the fall of Gaza, or the loss of the entire Egyptian Air Force, the loss of Katef stunned Nasser and his war minister. Instead of concentrating their effort on blocking the Israelis on the shoreline or in the 2 passes, Ammar, or maybe Nasser, fearing losing the rest of their army, ordered a total retreat beyond the Suez. Divisions and brigades which barely had contact with the Israelis started a hasty dash to the canal, and many were trapped by the blocks the IDF set on the passages. What can we learn from this battle? What were the principles that led Sharon during the planning and execution? The first aspect we must acknowledge is the commander disposition. Years later in the Yom Kippur War, Dayan commentated about Sharon. You can give 2 divisions to Talik and he will patiently explain why it can't be done. Give the same mission to Sharon and he won't even ask how many tanks he may have. In other words, Sharon was an extremely aggressive general. Later he lectures on the principle of his plan. Reckless concentration of force, a term coined by Sharon. The natural tendency is to preserve forces for the unexpected, but the IDF will always encounter superior numbers, and the only way to overcome this is by quick maneuvering to achieve a brief equilibrium of force in a narrow area. Violent patrols on the flanks. Faking the fog of war and confusion by pretending to attack on different sides while keeping the enemy guessing and blocking his way for reinforcement. Deception. Secrecy is never enough. The enemy must always guess your next move. Simplicity. The plan was complicated on divisional level, but every officer and every unit had a simple, unambiguous task. Cooperation of different branches. To make best of all resources, Air Force, artillery, tanks and infantry must work together seamlessly. All branches must train together and have the same language when in combat.